Said the Black Panther Party that they can do anything they want to us. We might not be back. I might be in jail. I might be anywhere. But when I leave, you can remember I said with the last words on my lips that I am a revolutionary. And you're going to have to keep on saying that.
On December 4th, 1969, at 2337 West Monroe Street on the west side of Chicago, 14 undercover and heavily armed police officers raided a residential home and fired over 90 bullets. Later that night, 21-year-old Fred Hampton was pronounced dead, with 2 gunshot wounds to the back of the head. Fred Hampton was a leader who practiced activism in his home city of Chicago from his childhood to the fateful day of murder by his own government. But why was he deemed a target? What was it about his activism that has made him a symbol of change? And why was he perceived a threat? In this video, I'm going to discuss Fred Hampton's life and work. And in part 2, I will discuss the legacy he has left behind as I tour his childhood home with Fred Hampton Jr. in Maywood, Illinois. His story starts on August 30th, 1948 in Summit, Argo, Illinois. Frederick Allen Hampton Sr. was born to 2 Southern parents who moved from Haynesville, Louisiana, to the Chicago suburbs during the Great Migration. He was the 3rd child of Iberia and Francis Hampton, the youngest of his siblings. During the Hampton family's time at Argo, they met some neighbors who had recently moved from Mississippi in search of work, one of which was Mamie Till and her son Emmett. Iberia Hampton would watch Emmett at her home on occasion. Unknowingly, the young Emmett Till would be brutally killed in Mississippi, and the nationally recognized funeral service would be held in the same funeral home hosting Fred Hampton's body 14 years later. In 1951, the Hampton family moved to Blue Island on the outskirts of Chicago, where they had to face rampant racism and discrimination from white residents. The young Fred Hampton would constantly be in fights with white students who called him names, leading the family to move to Maywood. At age 10, Fred would invite the kids in the neighborhood for breakfast on Saturdays, which later influenced the free breakfast program he would pioneer. During his childhood vacations, he often went on trips to Louisiana to visit family, where he witnessed widespread segregation and subhuman conditions in black Southern communities. Fred attended East Proviso High School in Maywood, where he began reading from prominent black authors such as Malcolm X, Marcus Garvey, and W.E.B. Du Bois. During his time at East Proviso, Fred found himself infuriated with inequalities faced by black students. He found that many black students were flunking out of school as white teachers did not care or treated them with disrespect. This led Fred to pressure the school to hire more black faculty and staff. Fred was also concerned with the inequality concerning the homecoming queen, which the school required to be white for nomination. In response to this, Fred organized a walkout and boycott of the school, which resulted in East Proviso High School electing its first ever black homecoming queen. This early activist spirit that Fred Hampton displayed attracted the attention of Don Williams, head of the West Suburban NAACP chapter, who asked Fred to organize a Maywood chapter. He worked as leader of the branch, organizing nearly 500 members in the community of just 27,000. One of the priorities of teenage Fred Hampton was to get a pool in Maywood. The lakeshore was too far, and the nearest pool in Bellwood was segregated, leaving most of the black youth in Maywood without a place to cool off in the summer. In 1966, he graduated from East Proviso, not stopping his political action there. In his time with the NAACP, he pushed for more professionalism in the police departments, as well as the ability for Maywood voters to be able to fire corrupt and brutal police officers. It is impossible to understand the development of Fred Hampton without understanding the city around him. To many, Chicago was and continues to be one of the most segregated cities in the United States. The uprisings in 1966 around the country undoubtedly played a role in shaping his leadership and ideology later on. Later that year, Dr. Martin Luther King marched and lived in Chicago, to which Fred Hampton joined the march. It was described as being met with extreme forms of racism, with people throwing rocks and dressing as Nazis. Fred, although initially enthusiastic, witnessed a woman get spit on by a racist, to which his focus on nonviolence changed. This view was shared by most of Chicago's black youth, who booed Martin Luther King Jr. as he nonviolently protested while being pelted with rocks by white residents. Fred Hampton began looking towards the teachings of Malcolm X principally, as well as identifying with the struggles of the Third World. He was well read in the works of Che Guevara, Ho Chi Minh, and Mao Zedong. He began preaching for the victory of the North Vietnamese in the Vietnam War. Through his disillusionment with peaceful tactics and city management of segregation, police brutality, among other things, Fred Hampton began looking towards the West Coast, where 30 Panthers led by Huey P. Newton and Bobby Seale protested in front of the California state legislature holding rifles. An inspired Fred Hampton urged Maywood's black youth to pressure the city council on opening an integrated swimming pool, to which the crowd was met with tear gas and police aggression. The crowd later went on to break windows on Fifth Avenue, and Fred Hampton was arrested on a charge of inciting mob action. It was at this point where Fred was targeted and harassed by the Maywood Police Department to such a large degree that he could not drive without being stopped. The Maywood Police Department was not the only department viewing Fred critically, however, as unknowingly to him, he was placed under the FBI's key agitator list by Director J. Edgar Hoover under the covert and clandestine operations of COINTELPRO.
I am pleased to report that today, all law enforcement presents a united front against so-called fifth column activities in every state, county, and municipality throughout our land. In this period of national emergency, the strength of law enforcement is as important as the strength of our Army and Navy.
In order to understand Fred Hampton's short but significant career, we must first get into what was the Black Panther Party. The Black Panther Party for Self-Defense was a Marxist-Leninist organization founded by Huey P. Newton and Bobby Seale in Oakland, California in 1966. The group participated in cop watching, or the open carry patrol of their neighborhoods in order to prevent police harassment. From 1966 to 1982, the group carried out measures such as establishing education programs and walk-in clinics. The Black Panther Party created the 10-point platform, the backbone of the party, which stated as follows: we want freedom. We want the power to determine the destiny of our black community. We want full employment of our people. We want an end to the robbery by the capitalists of our black community. We want decent housing fit for shelter of human beings. We want education for our people that exposes the true nature of this decadent American society. We want education that teaches us our true history and our role in present-day society. We want all black men to be exempt from military service. We want an immediate end to police brutality and the murder of black people. We want all black people, when brought to trial, to be tried in court by a jury of their peer group or people from their black communities, as defined by the Constitution of the United States. We want land, bread, housing, education, clothing, justice, and peace. Due to the socialist and revolutionary elements that made up the Black Panther Party, it was frequently targeted by the FBI and the COINTELPRO program.
Secret FBI memos made public today show that the late J. Edgar Hoover ordered a nationwide campaign to disrupt the activities of the New Left without telling any of his superiors about it. The FBI campaign lasted from 1968 until 1971, when Mr. Hoover ended it. He ordered his agents not only to expose New Left groups, but to take action against them to neutralize them.
COINTELPRO, short for Counterintelligence Program, was a series of clandestine and illegal operations conducted by the FBI on American citizens in the 1950s, 60s, and 70s. Its primary goal was to infiltrate, discredit, and disrupt political organizations deemed a threat to internal U.S. security and the U.S. government. Groups targeted by the operation included the Socialist Workers' Party, Puerto Rican Nationalist Party, and the Black Panther Party. Under the leadership of FBI Director J. Edgar Hoover, the FBI engaged in acts such as wiretapping, blackmailing, inciting infighting among groups, using physical force, and spreading misinformation. The FBI kept detailed files on many key figures during this time period, including Martin Luther King Jr., Malcolm X, Muhammad Ali, and more relevant to this topic, Fred Hampton. Tracking back to the main point, Fred Hampton became chairman of the Illinois Black Panther Party after his work in the NAACP got the attention of the main branch in Oakland. Fred quickly stood out as a charismatic and dedicated leader. He condemned sexism in the party, which at the time was a divisive issue. He focused his attention on expanding the free breakfast program, which fed thousands of children who did not get meals before school.
That breakfast for children is something else. You ought to dig on it. Every sister in this audience. Now, every sister in this audience ought to get themselves together and come on down and help us with that breakfast for children program. You ought to come down and help feed them children in the morning. We have breakfast for children because we teach the people through practice, through observation and participation, that people can be fed free. That's the people's thing. Socialism is the people. You're afraid of yourself. If you're afraid of socialism, you're afraid of yourself.
In 1968, Fred Hampton was accused of stealing $71 worth of ice cream from a truck and redistributing it to kids on the street, to which he received 2 to 5 years of jail time, believed by many to be a direct result of FBI attempts to destroy the party. Despite this, however, Fred's popularity surged, as he now had a Robin Hood figure attached to his personality. Upon his release, Fred achieved what is believed by many to be one of his greatest successes by forming the Rainbow Coalition, an anti-class movement between the Young Lords, the Young Patriots, and the Black Panthers. The coalition was historic because it bridged the gaps of race in a city as segregated as Chicago. Under Fred's guidance, the poor white Appalachian people were marching with the Puerto Ricans and black people under one unified cause of fighting inequality and capitalism. All groups faced diminished job opportunities, the issues of gentrification and redlining, and constant harassment from police. Fred Hampton believed the unity between races was necessary to wage the protracted class struggle, and that nationalist causes would set it behind. It needed to be seen as oppressor against oppressed, not white against black.
Papa Doc in Haiti hated everything white. Man, you couldn't put this white paper in front of Papa Doc's face. But he moved all the white people out and he took over and be oppressed. He did, causing no education. And the people that had been educated, they just said that we don't hate the motherfucking white people, we hate the oppressor, whether he be white, black, brown, or yellow.
Through his emphasis that ethnic conflict would only worsen conditions for oppressed groups in the U.S., Fred's Rainbow Coalition grew in numbers and was joined by other groups such as the American Indian Movement and the Brown Berets. Hampton rose in ranks through the Black Panthers and soon gained national recognition for his charisma and ability to speak so passionately. He organized rallies, made sure the People's Clinic was taken care of, and taught at political rallies and events. Fred Hampton, at the age of 21, became one of the most influential and well-revered leaders in the civil rights movement.
We said that we work with anybody and form coalition with anybody that has revolution on their mind. We're not a racist organization because we understand that racism is an excuse used for capitalism, and we know that racism is a byproduct of capitalism. Okay. We said we're not going to fight capitalism with black capitalism, but we're going to fight it with socialism.
Fred Hampton's charismatic character and ability to unite people for the same cause caught the attention of the FBI. The FBI believed his personality and knowledge was a threat, and a March 1968 memo stated that their goals included to, quote-unquote, prevent the rise of a messiah who could unify the black nationalist movement, to pinpoint potential troublemakers and neutralize them before they exercise their potential, and to discredit leaders from gaining respectability to the responsible community and to liberals who have vestiges of sympathy. In 1967, Fred Hampton was officially placed under FBI surveillance as a key militant leader, and subsequently his mother's phone was wiretapped. In 1968, the FBI made a deal with William O'Neill, facing federal charges for driving a stolen vehicle across state lines, to infiltrate the Illinois Black Panther Party in exchange for a drop in the charges. William O'Neill joined the Black Panther Party. However, contrary to popular belief, he did not become director of chapter security. As I was informed by Fred Hampton Jr., the rumor that O'Neill was director was authored by an FBI misinformation campaign. During his time in the party, O'Neill instigated fighting between the Panthers and other groups such as the SDS, in an effort to isolate them from other groups at the request of the FBI. The FBI later started a disinformation campaign, which included distributing racist material and attempting to start violence between the Panthers and other groups in Chicago. O'Neill, through his connections with Fred Hampton, drew a detailed floor plan of Fred and his pregnant girlfriend Deborah Johnson's apartment at 2337 West Monroe Street in West Chicago, and gave it to FBI agent Roy Mitchell. Following a political speech at a church, Fred walked home in the company of several Panther members. William O'Neill was inside the apartment, making the group a late dinner. It is suspected that at the request of the FBI, O'Neill spiked Fred's drink with the sedative drug in order to ensure that Fred would be asleep later that night. The meal was consumed at midnight, and at around 1:30 a.m. on December 4th, Fred fell asleep mid-sentence while on the phone with his mother.
This is 2337 West Monroe, described by police as a depot for Black Panther Party arms and ammunition. 14 States Attorney's policemen, led by Sergeant Daniel Groth, found out indeed it was a depot for weapons. After a 15-minute gun battle that cost Illinois Black Panther Party Chairman Fred Hampton his life.
In the early hours of December 4th, 1969, 14 heavily armed police officers entered the apartment, immediately killing Panther member Mark Clark with a gunshot to the heart as he opened the door. During the ensuing raid, Chicago police officers fired 90 to 99 shots in the apartment over the course of the next minutes. The bullets flew through the walls and injured 4 other Panthers critically. Deborah Johnson, Fred Hampton's fiancée, recalls the fateful night as she slept next to Fred Hampton in the apartment.
When he looked up, he didn't say a word, and he didn't move, except for moving his head up. He laid his head back down to the side like that. He never said a word, and he never got up out the bed. At that time, I was 8.5 to 9 months pregnant. My baby was to be delivered in 2 weeks. Pigs kept on shooting. So he kept on hollering out. Finally, they stopped. They pushed me and the other brother by the kitchen door and told us to face the wall. Heard a pig say, "He's barely alive, or he'll barely make it." I assume they were talking about Chairman Fred.
According to Miss Deborah Johnson and the testimonies from surviving Panthers, the officers concluded that despite the gunfire, Fred Hampton would survive. Based on autopsy reports and witness testimony, 21-year-old Fred Hampton was shot point blank in the back of the head with 2 bullets, to which an officer replied saying, "He's good and dead now." Fred Hampton was removed from the apartment by smiling police officers, who charged the surviving Panther members with assault and attempted murder charges, claiming the incident was a shootout. It was later proven that the only bullet fired was from Mark Clark's shotgun, which was fired as a result of a post-mortem spasm. Police images claiming to show bullet holes were actually nail beds, and photography work by Mike Gray to expose this was released in the 1971 documentary, The Murder of Fred Hampton. Unfortunately, Fred Hampton's life was cut short, and what may have been possible for the future of Chicago and the United States as a whole is lost. Following the raid, the family of Mark Clark and Fred Hampton sued the city of Chicago. The case was settled over a decade after it was filed for $1.85 million. Jeffrey Haas, author of The Assassination of Fred Hampton and lawyer who worked with Hampton, stated, "Of course, there is also the legacy that, without a young leader, I think the west side of Chicago degenerated a lot into drugs. And without leaders like Fred Hampton, I think the gangs and the drugs became much more prevalent on the west side. He was an alternative to that. He talked about serving the community, talked about breakfast programs, educating the people, community control of the police. So I think that that's unfortunately another legacy of Fred's murder." After long and ongoing battles with the city of Chicago, which Fred Hampton Jr. informed me of, progress has been made in keeping Fred's legacy alive. In 2004, December 4th was officially named Fred Hampton Day by the Chicago mayor. I had the opportunity to visit Maywood Public Pool, built after his death and named in his honor to reflect his wish to see an integrated pool in Maywood. In April 2022, Fred Hampton's childhood home was given the historical landmark status, ending the long battle between the city, who wanted to bulldoze the building. At East Proviso High School, students learn about Fred Hampton's legacy through events and competitions throughout the school year. Fred Hampton Jr. also organizes the Black Panther Cubs, where Chicago residents come together to commemorate his father's legacy. Fred Hampton's dedication to justice and bridging gaps between people continues to inspire others today, and a part of keeping his legacy alive is through watching and sharing videos like this one, celebrating his life and keeping his memory alive.
When you leave here saying last week, before you go to bed, next time I am a revolutionary. Say it when you're going out.
I'd like to thank any viewers who have made it this far in the video. Thank you for supporting my channel and my video. Please make sure to like the video and subscribe if you did enjoy it. And please drop any comments. I will be dropping the link to the part 2 where I interview Fred Hampton Jr. in the historic Maywood home as I get a tour from him, more in depth about his childhood and his legacy in present day Chicago. So yeah, Please subscribe if you did enjoy this content, and have a good day.
And we're going to say it after this, and after I'm locked up, and after everybody's locked up, that you can jail revolutionaries, but you can't jail a revolution.